Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation brought to you by the Society of Decision Professionals and Decision Analysis Society, which is entitled Decision Professionals and Decision Professors, Synergies and Opportunities Between Practitioners, Academics, and Organizations. I have the honor now to introduce you to our moderator, Gilberto Montebello. Gilberto is a professor of management science and director of executive education at Loughborough University in the UK. He is an expert on multi-criteria decision analysis and behavioral decision analysis. Further, Gilberto is associate editor of the Informs Decision Analysis Journal and the chair of the SDP Learning Exchange Program Council. Today, he will introduce our speakers and facilitate your questions and comments during the discussion. Gilberto, thank you for joining us, and I'd like to turn the presentation over to you now.
Many thanks, Brig and Jay, for the introduction. Welcome, Emmanuel and Leslie. I'm delighted to have you both here. I know that you guys have very busy schedules, so we really appreciate your time and in collaboration to this initiative, which I should say as chair of the SDP program, webinar program, and also as an DAS representative in the program committee. It's something that I'm delighted because I think since I joined SDP a couple of years ago, I thought that there are so many opportunities of these two societies to work closer together. And now it's like a dream coming true. So thank you very much for coming. And I think we better start with our roundtable. I don't know if we can switch off the slides and have big screenshots of the two speakers, Brig et al, please. Is there a way? But I think we better start as, or you have to keep us as it is with the photos.
Oh, there fantastic. It is.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think let's kick off with a quick introduction to each society. I'm aware that we have lots of viewers that are either belong to one or to another, to the other one, or maybe to both, but some are not, some are new to these societies. So if you could just give us, please, a couple of minutes introducing the society and your vision for the society for the next 5 years, that would be great, please. Leslie, do you want to start, please?
Sure thing. I just unmuted myself, so hopefully I'm being heard here. But all right, great. So with regard to the SDP, the roots of the SDP are really in terms of practice. You know, our charter is listed out on our website, and one of the things that it says out there is even when faced with the most difficult, complex, and risky decisions, the majority of decision makers don't always turn to decision professionals for guidance. The reasons for this are many and varied. And you know, and I think it's a true statement. It was a true statement, you know, early on in my career as a decision analyst professional, and it's still true now, quite a few years later. But you know, I like to think the situation's getting better, and the SDP's mission really is to support practitioners. And so we do that in a handful of ways. We do that by supporting awareness about decision analysis, about the existence of decision analysis and the practical benefits of DA, as well as by trying to publicize some best practices, in particular through our DAG conference and local chapters and various other forums that we have. Then we also have some support for individuals who are practitioners. We have some programs around certification, which are aimed to you know, establish credibility of individuals. We have a code of ethics, and you know, really our mission, I think, is to emphasize the professionalism of our profession. And with that, I'll maybe ask Emmanuel to jump in and share a little bit about DAS.
Thank you, Leslie.
Well, thank you very much, Leslie, and also thank you, Gilberto. Thank you, you for organizing this and for the invitation. I'm very pleased to be representing DAS, the Decision Analysis Society here. The Decision Analysis Society has this year had its 40th birthday. So it's been around quite a while, and it has started even before this, now it's 40 years of the Decision Analysis Society, even before it was a chapter of Inform. So our tradition goes back even before 1996, even in the I think late 80s. And the purpose of the Decision Analysis Society is the development and use of logical methods of decision making. So the Decision Analysis Society wishes to continue the tradition, and in this respect, promoting decision analysis. In this respect, we have an immediate overlap with the Society of Decision Professionals, and we have members both in the academia and among practitioners. And the idea is to promote method for decision making and the research also necessary to innovate the methods of decision analysis, considering problems of risk under uncertainty, multi-criteria decision-making problems, decision-making problems supported by computer modeling. And here in the recent years, we have the challenge, if you want, of the business analytics of artificial intelligence, computer science, how to incorporate this type of novelties into better decision-making, because of course we cannot let machine decide for us. And the society is carrying on also research, promoting also decision analysis in academia, and is a branch part of Informs. In terms of activities that we do, we give 4 main awards that are the Frank Ramsey Award, which is the medal awarded for outstanding contributions to decision analysis and is life career achievement award. Then we have the best publication award of all publications that concern decision analysis and have been published, say, if we are in 2021, all the papers that have been published in 2019, and it's a huge work to analyze all these papers. The society has also a best practice award, and this is one form of synergy. We will talk about synergy just in a second with the Society of Decision Professionals, because this is actually the award that wants to recognize contributions done by of decision analysis in practice. So the fact that decision analysis has made an impact in a real life problem in an organization. And then we have the DAS Student Paper Award, which is a best paper whose main author was a student. And this is an award that we wish to have because we also want to stimulate, to provide stimuli to students, to have the new generations of decision scientists. Will they be professionals or academicians? Both of them, we would like to nurture them also through our academic education that wants to provide these foundations that if you want to date back in research, and they are needed to solve the problems rationally, and they date back to masters such as De Finetti, Savage, Raifa, Howard, all these great giants that have shaped our field. We also have our field journal, the Decision Analysis Journal, which is promoted and sponsored by the Decision Analysis Society. The journal publishes frontier research in decision analysis theory and applications. And the journal also has another award, which is the best paper of the Decision Analysis Journal Award. So with this, we have 5 awards. And also we organize sessions at the Informs every year, where we have our business meeting and meeting of the Decision Analysis Society with several streams. Plus we have the Advances in Decision Analysis Conference. Should be every 2 years. This year would have been the year of the conference, but unfortunately due to the pandemics we could not host the conference, and so we postponed it to next year. Of the events that you have seen before, we have also this special event this summer, probably end of June, joint Decision Analysis Society and Society for Risk Analysis. Feel free to join. It will be online, a couple of days with a very quick format, so to be, let's say, enjoyed and not online things can be, difficult to organize, but this will be a light format to provide stimuli to the decision analysis community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So both very active societies. Just a reminder to everybody that is attending this roundtable that please feel free to send questions. I'm checking here the questions. The first one was a comment. Nice tie, Emmanuel. So that is but please keep sending questions. So
thank you for that.
I guess it's Italian. Given that so many activities, I think the first obvious question perhaps is, what are the opportunities for joint collaborations between the two societies? And again, I'll ask first Leslie and then Emmanuel following, please.
That's a great question. You know, Emmanuel and I and Gilberto did a little bit of prep for this conversation, and we started out, you know, just by talking about what the current synergies are, and you know, and it's not an insignificant list, you know. So it's like the first thing that we noted is that it's not terrifically uncommon for us to do a session like this, a joint webinar. We, you know, often create content that is shared in each other's newsletter. We find that often people are speaking at, you know, our members are speaking at DAS conferences, DAS members are speaking at our conferences. We also offer an award jointly. And so there's another, you know, it's current existing synergy. But, you know, I think the most fundamental thing that we landed on is that, you know, although the SDP is positioned more as a sort of an applied practitioner organization, and DAS is much more of an academic institution, like those branches are not in any way orthogonal. You know, there's a lot of overlap between them. There's, you know, at the heart, there are problems and there are ideas, and people on both sides from both organizations play in both spaces. And so I think, you know, my view is that there's a lot of natural synergy, and, you know, some that we have created structure to support, and some that just exist naturally. And, you know, and of course that led a little bit to some conversations about, you know, what structural things might we put in place to further support the synergies that exist. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Emmanuel to see what he might like to add.
Thank you, Leslie. Emmanuel?
No, thank you. No, you said it in a nutshell. I think, yes, we have some initiative ongoing and joint, and we have really a very nice flow of exchange for the information that we think is beneficial for the field, because both societies promote, of course, decision analysis, and of course, the more we cooperate together, the better is for decision analysis field, and of course, the better is for both society in return, even if we have slightly different configurations. In that respect, the synergies are several. We can take notes also from what we have received as your initial comments also of the public, and if you want also to write on this, we will be happy to take it on. But clearly there is a lot of synergy that can be done between theory and practice. Every day we have a new problem, and we see nowadays, even with the pandemic, we have new decision analysis problems. People need people, organization, ourselves in our everyday lives, our institution, our universities, they need better decision making. It's not because the method that we have up to now don't work, but it's just because the world evolves, and you sometimes you have to renew your tools, or maybe you have to use old tools, but in a different way. And there is, I think, where we have a lot of synergies between what the academia can offer with the theories, because sometimes the theory helps in providing the ground so that the solution is not just a temporary solution, but becomes even a long-term, as long as it can last for a problem. And on the other side, however, research is in a sense better, or needs to have motivation from practice, as sometimes, okay, there are some scientific innovations. If you consider, for instance, the laser was invented without a specific scope, and then it has found applications all over the place. But probably is more the situations in which there was a problem, and then you found a solution through academic research for a very specific problem. And these are then the great successes that we know in our fields and in other things, and are the things that make us grow as professionals, both if you are in academia and you solve a problem that's enriching, and on the other side, if you are the first to use a new method, or you find a new method to solve a problem that started from a practical situation, that's also an enriching experience, something that we all look for professionally.
Thank you. So I think it's time for doing our first poll. And if you guys check on the poll, the question is, which society have you ever been a member of SDP, DAS, both SDP and DAS, or neither. So if you could just quickly select, it gives us an idea about the audience, please. So we have 71% voted. So if you could vote right now, please, then we're going to close the poll. Okay, so we close the poll now, and I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm going to read it aloud. So 40% neither, 29% SDP only, DAS 6% only, and both SDP and DAS 25%. So the majority is, of course, SDP, but there is 1/4 of attendees are from DAS. Actually, 30%. So that is a very good spread of interest, which is great. I should say that one thing that we definitely have been doing in terms of, I'm going to chip in now a bit and step away from my role as a moderator. One thing that we've been doing, I think, very successfully is a series of joint webinars, SDP DAS, over the last 2 years, which are a great way of starting, but there is much more. And that's exactly why we are talking about, what next. And I think there are new problems that need new methods. So this is interesting for academics. Or there are existing problems that might require methods that have to be adapted. And these are also interesting for academics. And how these innovative solutions might be interesting for practitioners in their organization. So there is, in my view, clearly big opportunities. Right, so there are opportunities, but there are challenges as well. So I think my next question is, what are the challenges? If the opportunities are so obvious, why is it so challenging to have the two societies, or why is it a bit challenging to have the two societies working closer together? And Leslie, I'll ask you first, please.
Okay. I think the biggest challenge that I see is that I think people tend to hang with the people they know, if you will. So if you're from a community where the DAS is like that's where people have become members, I think that's where, I think you probably are an academic. Your academic friends probably belong to DAS, and if you're inclined to join an organization, you're probably more aware of that one. On the industry side, if I think people are going to tend to, well, I mean, some people will, it's like, great, there's more than one organization, I'm going to join them all. But I think there is another segment of people who are just going to, sort of put their toe in the pool gently and try one, and they're just going to try the one that has better penetration in the community that they're part of. So to me, that's a challenge, both to raise awareness of both of our groups, and and I think kind of looking forward to create some linkages between the organizations, so that if people are sort of naturally more interested in one than the other, they can find their way to the community that is closest to where their interests lie.
Thank you. So basically, the entry point sometimes focus the attention on a single society.
I think so, and I also think that people do tend to transition between the worlds, right? I mean, many people are students when they get their PhD. Maybe they're more aware of DAS, and maybe they go out in the world and they get a job, and now they're more in the world of SDP's target audience. Well, if they've become a member of DAS and they're aware of the community and they're aware of the great content that's out there on that side, they're probably going to stick with their membership. If they don't get pulled into the DAS until they're out in industry, they might end up joining SDP. And maybe there are it's like on the poll, I think we said that 25% of people were were members of both. To me, that's a tremendous number of people who basically are voting with their feet to recognize the value that they get from each organization.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. Yes, thank you for that. Emmanuel, what are the challenges from your perspective?
No, I fully agree with what Leslie said. So I think there is little to add on that. I think in terms of challenges, she has really exhausted the discussion. I would add a little things that we might do to reduce the challenges, and this is for instance starting a little working group that has some members of SDP and DAS, and they are both together, and this allows to have the two societies working together and facilitates transmission of information, ideas for joint initiatives, and I think so. And so the idea is we have to do little by little. And if I'm allowed to say what is a challenge, I see a challenge for the societies. Okay, because well, as said, Leslie, it's the flavor of one's profession that leads him to choose one society rather than the other, and maybe both, because we see theoretically we should all be members of both. The challenge that I see, however, is an external one, if I may. That is, I think as decision analysts and decision analysis, we should be able to communicate the value of decision analysis in this artificial intelligence, big data, data science challenge that we are having. Because I don't know how you experience it, but even in my university, even in presenting research projects, I have a decision analysis project. But if I say that I'm doing data science, or I vest it as business analytics more in general, the ear of the audience becomes, wow, now you're talking about the things that everyone is talking about, big data, data-driven economy, artificial intelligence. If you tell them, look, okay, you have big data, you have artificial intelligence, you have to decide, well, this is not so. And I think this is one of the challenges we should show that decisions are in a sense above these tools that are below. And so I think the challenge comes from the field, from outside more than internally.
Yeah, that's an excellent coincidence, because that's a question that Hua Deng asked. How can we convince people to rely not only on analytics but actually on decision professions, decision analysis? And I think you covered very well this question. The other question I think that's interesting here is Charles Mazik. To summarize, I mean, the quality of decision making, both public and companies, in recent years maybe has not been that great. I'll say public decisions, particularly in Britain, they haven't been that great, in my opinion. So the question is, how can we, as societies, help to improve the quality of decision making, particularly public decision making, but also corporate decision making, with those joint initiatives, because that's our remit. Yes. Leslie?
This is a great question. I still remember back in the day when I was a brand new consultant at SDG, going through my orientation period, and I recall at my orientation, one of the speakers was Ron Howard, and I remember him just opining that using DA in the political sphere is, he didn't say this, but what I took away is that it's kind of like that old adage about teaching a pig to sing, right? That it annoys the pig and it creates, a terrible noise. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but, I think that to use decision analysis and get to, I think what we would all deem to be a good result, there's some relationship between what your intention is, right? I mean, it's like if my framing on a decision is that I only care about my interests and I don't care about anybody else's interest, I can probably come up with a solution that will serve that. If my goal is to optimize over a society or many, many stakeholders, I can probably solve that problem as well. So I think the issue here is it's a framing issue. is that many of the players in the decision want to optimize for their own benefit and not to optimize across the whole. And I think that's what we see plays out over and over and over again. I don't know, that's how I've ended up understanding Ron's comment after, you know, a handful of years. I'm curious about Emmanuel's thoughts on this as well.
Me too, Emmanuel.
No, well, when you talk about Ron Howard, I think he really was, his thoughts on decision analysis are always at the point, so he's completely right. Concerning ways to increase the visibility of both societies and actually of decision analysis, I was thinking also, and on the top of my mind, it comes a couple of things. First of all, is education. So we probably need to increase the number of courses that have the name decision analysis. Sometimes we hide decision analysis into courses that are strategic management or other things, and they don't really have the label decision analysis. So and in fact, I was even thinking, well, okay, in my own little world, in my university, I will try to launch a course which is called decision analysis. So I want people to see that there is this, we are doing something, okay? So even at the university. On the other side, the point is, if we have to go through education, we have also education, you know, continuing education. So now I don't want to engage other people's time, but one idea could be even a summer school on decision analysis jointly sponsored by SDP and DAS, because then you know, this would have a flag that you can have a course in improving decision making. And of course, decision analysis then is taught in many courses at the MBA level at several universities. So we might also exploit that and show where decision analysis is taught. On the other side, at a big political level, we might leverage on our conferences to invite speakers who are in important positions. And so, Leslie, you remember we were talking about Angela Merkel. Yeah, so these people, and show them there is a discipline which is called decision analysis, where they might not be aware. So in a sense, we are still a niche with respect to, you know, with respect to the publicity or diffusion that big data, artificial intelligence has. Decision analysis still remains probably a niche, although it's critical, because decision making is our most important daily activity everywhere.
Yeah, you know, and if I can just jump in as well, you know, I think one of the points that's made by the person who submitted the question is the role of information, you know, and I think that's a tremendous issue, right? Long ago, we all got our news from the same sources because there were just a small handful of channels, and they were the only ones that were out there, and so everybody used them, and so that the news had to be generally of interest to everybody, and you know, and had to pass the truth filter for everybody in the audience. It's much different than it is today. You know, it's like I found myself saying, you know, to one of my family members, you know, on the topic of what should be done about, you know, our situation, and I basically said, well, anybody who's found to be breaking the law because they believe things that are untrue should be sentenced to read a newspaper, you know, and I think it's a huge social issue, you know, hopefully not so much in the context of companies and you know, individuals that have some self-motivation, if you will.
That's quite interesting. I'm going to chip in again and picking up from both threads really, and I wonder if we could support decision making in highly politicized environments. This maybe will need a different type of analysis, particularly for framing. And indeed, I think Britain has actually been championing the idea that actually we need to spend more time framing problems, especially when you have more decentralized and politicized environments. That's actually the reason that I came to Britain for my academic career, because of these evolutions or developments. And I think maybe that's a way of linking up decision analysis with highly politicized public decision making. Is about the problem framing and expanding and understanding better the different perspectives. and also that they might have different objectives to be achieved beyond in net present value optimization. Anyhow, so let's go back to, there are lots of questions here. Yes.
Gilberto, if I can just jump in one more time. I'm looking at the questions and I see, Karen Jenny, who is a past president of the DAS and a longtime member of the SDP, her comment, I think, which is, she's part of the USGS, so she is somebody who is actually part of government. And her comment is that, it merits a more serious and nuanced discussion than just kind of citing a comment, even by one of the most well-respected members of our DA foundation. And I think that's just right. And I absolutely didn't mean to create the impression that, we shouldn't bother to get into that public or government sphere. I do think that there are some additional challenges that we don't have in the private sector.
Yeah, I think one suggestion here, picking up from this interesting discussion, is actually that maybe it's about us also expanding the focus onto public decisions, improving public decisions, as well as corporate decisions. And it's something that I think, again, Britain has been leading, I think, in terms of OR in public decisions. There is a lot of OR, operations research, focused on improving public decisions. And maybe that's something for us as two societies to think about. Yeah, I'd like to go back to one point that Irene has made. Let me just, so Irene Abizaid, she said, I think what we could do is to educate decision makers through simplified workshops. So that's a kind of practical suggestion. So would workshops, joint workshops, SDP, DAS, help in spreading the good work and the positive effects that decision analysis might have? Leslie.
Well, I think that sort of two answer. I guess the answer I would give here is yes, but. Okay, so I do believe that decision makers who go through a process of thinking about how to break down what drives their decision making, what it's based on, I think, in my experience, people that have done that have found it helpful. The challenge is that the people who do that in some ways self-select for being open to think of it as a value-producing opportunity. And I've also encountered many decision makers who would respond to such activity by saying something like, well, of course, all my decisions are fine. What are you even talking about? And that's not very aligned with learning from, a workshop. So, it's the people that maybe most need decision analysis or maybe least aware of their need. And I think that's the challenge there.
Thank you, Leslie. Emmanuel?
I agree with Leslie. I agree that workshops is a very good opportunity, of course, because they can engage. And actually, if there is an opportunity, a possibility, because there is an occasion, so someone, a group of people who would like to receive a course or a one-day, half-a-day seminar on decision analysis because they have this amount of time available for that, and they want to open their mind because they've never thought that there could be a systematic way to think about decisions, or even they want to advance. So then, reach out to us, and we of course are open to see this occasion. And I think for practical cases when they start from a specific initiative, why not? That's a beautiful opportunity. On the other side, we have the situation of several managers who have made so many decisions that they think that this for them is past the time to go through this, and organizing a workshop with this target in mind would of course be let's say a waste of time. So probably the blend between the two is you need to find the frame and the occasion, and you say, okay, there is this 10-15 people who really need, my corporation really would like that. And then, of course, you reach out to us and we try and help.
Thank you. Yeah, overcoming this overconfidence bias is a tough one. that people think that they
yes.
are already very good decision makers, but maybe they are not so good. Let's go to the second poll, and let's get some feedback from you guys. So how would you like to see the SDP and DIS collaborate even further? You can select all of them that apply: joint webinars, co-speaking at DAG, which is the SDP conference or DIS conference, virtual get-togethers for networking, local networking, or other. And then in this case, please write your ideas in the chat questions box. So could you select as many as you wish? So we have 66% voted. Could you please, Guy, make your choices? And then we're going to close the poll soon. So 73% voted, and we're going to close it. So let's see the results. So 83% joint webinars, 57% co-speaking at the DAG and DAS conferences, 57% virtual get-togethers for networking. That's an interesting result. Local networking, 45%, and other ideas such as joint workshops and joint local chapters were suggested as well. So that's really good ideas for, I think, for you guys to think about it. But the networking strikes me as something that it will be quite innovative, I think. So any reactions to those findings or opinions, Leslie?
So I'm curious. I feel like I've gone first on all of these, and so I'm kind of curious to let Emmanuel go first and see what he has to say to it.
It's the first mover advantage.
That's right. It's much easier to be the first.
Okay, so well, I'm happy about the 83% joint webinars, because this is actually what we're doing now, and the series that we already created of several joint webinars, which are coordinated, by the way, by Gilberto. So this is fantastic. So basically, things we are doing, at least from the poll, the alternative that was most called for, and that's a good sign for the starting cooperation, the first bridge that we have built. Co-speaking at DAAG and DAS conference, also great. Yesterday we were talking with Leslie that maybe we could apply to SDP or DAS members fees for participating to both conferences. This we'll have to see later, but let's this 57% is also a sign that this could be a way to allow people to be at both conferences. Visual get-together for networking, that's also something that is fantastic. And actually, with the structure that we have now, I don't know if it's possible or not, depends on the platform, but one idea to have webinars, we will have also some webinar for DAS, but we will send it also, of course, to you, so it becomes sort of even a joint webinars also. I don't know if it's possible to add a room after the webinar, where people who are in the webinar continue talking, or maybe even, it could be, let's go for question and answers, but all the people who are there can talk, at least with the microphone, maybe if they're not the camera. And so that would be an easy way with the technology to allow already for visual networking right after the joint webinar. So even for people, it's the same time. Local networking also, DAS doesn't have really a local structure, but of course you can see which professors, which DAS member are close to you, and organize a dinner, or I don't know which type of events are organized locally by DAS members. And the others, I cannot read what could be ideas about the other ones, but all these are great.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the other thing that also came to my mind is that we've been organizing DAS sessions in the Informs conference with SDP members giving talks, And I had some talks, very good talks actually, in my sessions recently. So that's another way. I think Roberto Leiboras makes an interesting question here. What about joint outreach initiatives? Any ideas? Emmanuel, now I'm going to switch, so you have the first move advantage.
But Leslie didn't speak, but okay, so it's me again. I don't want to
Leslie,
talk
you
too
want
much.
to go first now?
I don't know who wants
Outreach to decision makers. Any
Sure,
ideas?
Sure. No, that's actually if I don't remember the name of the person was because I cannot see it.
Roberto,
but
yes.
If Roberto, you have particular ideas, also feel free to reach out, because the ways to do a joint outreach are many. There could be these joint webinars launched even through social networks and so on. It could be joint workshops specific for given institution, or enlarged to several ones. Could be a joint summer school, or one day dedicated, so the decision analysis day during the year that becomes sort of a conference, but workshop for outreach with an outstanding speaker. So that there can be several ideas. So yes, feel free to, and maybe what we could do even after this is to launch the idea of a joint working group of people. And if you want to, SDP and DAS, you want to volunteer to be in the joint, we would be happy to, launch this little ship and see how far it can go.
Thank you. Leslie?
Yeah, so I guess the way that I think about this is that, when there's two levels of collaboration that could emerge, right? One level is that individuals in each society could find ways to work together. And, and I think that's lovely that, people build their individual networks, they do good work together, it's a very rich model. And I do want to actually talk a little bit about the local networking possibilities. So I'm sure many of you know that the SDP has chapters, local chapters in Calgary, Houston, San Francisco, Seattle, London, and Vancouver. And I truly believe that we will have more once we get on the other side of the pandemic. There are a lot of other cities that we're looking at establishing local chapters that, the fact that people can't meet up in person has been a little bit of a barrier to that. And then, of course, the other area, opportunity to collaborate, has to do with, structures that the organizations may put in place together. And I think there's opportunity for both. I certainly think that, outreach is one of those things that also can happen at the individual level and can happen at the organizational level as well. And, I actually had not met Emmanuel until we started doing the prep for this webinar. I'm a little ashamed to admit it, but it's been, wonderful to make the connection with him. And I feel confident that will lead us both to have some thoughts about how we might work together in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there is already an action point here, which is this idea of a task force that thinks about joint initiatives from now on, which I think is fantastic. Another thing that we discussed before actually the webinar itself, which I would like to raise again because I thought it was a great idea, is this concept of putting together problem owners and academics to solve jointly problems that have some maybe research components, but also might have huge impacts on corporations and public organizations. So would you mind talking a little bit more about this idea? Maybe Emmanuel, you kicked off with this idea, so now I'll start with you on purpose.
Yeah, thank you. No, it came reading also the observations that you made before the webinar, so that we received, and actually, so how can we create a bridge between the needs of practitioners, their problems, and the research that has been done in academia, with the parenthesis that several people in academia participate in practical problems. Okay, so there is already a link. But I was thinking maybe if there is a corporation or an institution that wants to sort of sponsor this type of initiative, in the sense that give the practitioners the possibility, opportunity to work with, or in a research way with the researchers, okay, and there was also observations that we received that were talking about ownership, okay. So sometimes there is a method which is owned by a scientist and needs to be given to practitioners. On the other side, the practitioner has ownership of the problem and information and needs to pass this over to the researcher because of the two different roles. And maybe a way could be to structure some, we could call joint research initiatives, SDA, the SDP, DAS, in which a corporation says, okay, I have this nice problem, give me a call for ideas, and then we have a group of researchers. One needs to be from SDP, the other needs to be from DAS, or three of one, three of the same, and they have a proposal and say, I'm addressing your problem through this, and that can start a research or a joint working project on a team. So it's internally launched, but they say, oh, okay, I have this problem, I don't think I can solve it in 1 month. I want to talk a bit longer about that, so let's say 1 year time. Let's see if there is a group of SDP and DAS researchers who want to work together and bring me a solution. And then maybe I receive 5 proposals, and the one that I like more, I select.
Thank you. Leslie, how do you see this suggestion from a practitioner's perspective? So if you are a company that has this complex problem, how would you see this being operationalized?
So I guess a couple of thoughts here. So one way, like throughout my, my professional experience, I've had a couple of times where I'm trying to do something and I don't really have anything to call on in terms of history or, prior art. And I just think somebody must know something about this, and so, I guess I imagine a model where, like people on one side or the other might want to ask a question, an existence question. Who knows something about this? And, and I imagine myself in the future, having learned a little bit more about DAS, and your role, Gilberto, your role, Emmanuel, that I would likely now, if I found myself in that situation, I probably would reach out to somebody and say, hey, here's the kind of problem that I'm trying to solve. Do you know somebody on the academic side, maybe who's got a very deep set of knowledge about that? So I think that the more that we make the connection so that people can ask and answer those questions, the better off that we're going to be. I also love this idea of people collaborating on problems and bringing the perspective, the applied perspective as well as the academic perspective together. And I come from the pharma industry, and so science, pushing science forward, publishing, these are all things that people in my industry look at and say, oh, that's a good thing. And so I look at that and I see, well, this is an avenue where people who are in situations like mine now maybe have an avenue towards a credibility measure that otherwise is much, much harder to access.
Okay, that's a very good point, and I think it brings very well with a suggestion that Jeff Kisler is doing here. Always very thoughtful, Jeff. My best wishes to him. It's about collaboration, and he's saying actually the online world has helped us in making collaboration much easier than before with all the traveling. So maybe that's a way also of thinking about collaboration, more virtual collaboration. But let me ask a question on top of that is, do we need structures for this, enabling these practitioners and academics collaboration? And if so, what kind of structures the societies could provide to operationalize it? Emmanuel, you want to go first, please?
Well, no, I think that's so some ideas came out, but quickly here during this discussion, and I don't know if they can be retained or not. And I said this task force or roundtable could be not a solution, but could put on synergies and say, okay, no, the best way is a joint summer school. The best way is to create jointly sponsored research project. The best way is, or there is no best way. Let's do this and this and that. Or let's for instance start with the networking. Okay, so we add these live rooms after the webinars. We or we create one live room on June 6th, 2021, okay, on a specific problem. And so I think there are several opportunities, and clearly we can structure. So I think the role of the two societies would really be to, create an avenue for further collaboration. But of course, not considering. So I mean, also considering the fact that several members already have their own collaborations, as you were saying. So even individual initiatives are highly appreciated. So you don't, let's say, if you don't need the two societies to work together, do it independently of us. But we would be happy to create a structured way so that matches the two memberships.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, I absolutely think that there's a role for the organizations to, help direct traffic a little bit, if you will. If there's a lot of requests of a specific type, let's put structure in place to handle those easily, and let's create some structure so that we can handle kind of one-off things as they come up. I mean, one thing that I think about, within the SDP, we have councils, we have chapters, we have the DAG conference, we have webinars, we have a lot going on, and even in my role, I often have to call another person and think through what's the best avenue to, who do I reach out to get something done. For somebody outside the organization, like I just see it as would be very difficult to know the point of contact unless they have a background of being in leadership in one or the other organizations. So, we could make that a little bit easier.
Thank you. We have lots of questions that I'm afraid we don't have time to cover, but we have a couple of minutes, and I'll ask each one of you to say your final remarks for 1 minute maximum, and I'll start this time with Leslie. Please.
1 minute maximum. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I want to remind everybody of that very first poll that we took, and we asked people to what organization you belonged. For those of you that don't belong to either organization, I'm hoping that our conversation today may have highlighted a few benefits of both of the organizations for you. And I very much hope that you think about ways that you might increase your engagement with us. Once we, to participate in the local chapter events, which right now are virtual and eventually we'll be back to in person, to consider coming to DAG. As Gilberto mentioned, or maybe Jay mentioned this, registration is open. You are welcome in our events, and we hope someday that you will think about joining one or the other of our organizations, and ideally both. And for those of you that already are members of one or the other organization, I would encourage you to get to know more about the organization that you're not a part of, because I think both organizations have a tremendous amount to offer, both to the practitioners and to people on the academic side. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Manuel, your final remarks, 1 minute maximum, please.
Well, I continue what Leslie said. So in terms of inviting you to join either of the two societies, ideally both, as they provide a full coverage of the decision analysis profession. And regarding DAS, there is an option to join DAS through Informs, which is also a big society in business analytics with 12,000 members, or just DAS alone by itself. This said, I think I'm really happy to have had this conversation, to get to know Leslie, where she mentioned before that we actually didn't meet before, but this has been really a great pleasure. And I think this is really a promising start for the continuation of decision analysis in general, because the two main societies in decision analysis, well, let's not forget the Society of Decision Making, but now we are our two societies, and I think we have many bridges that we want to establish. We have some that have already been formed, some others that we will form in the future for sure. And therefore, any one of you who is interested in, just reach out, and so we will be happy to interact and continue this conversation forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much to Leslie and Emanuele. I think it was a really good, interesting discussion. Before we finish, I just want to say a big thanks to both Brig and Hilda for the always amazing organization, and also to Jay for all his support. And to all of you that attended, I wish you a safe time, take care, and see you next month. Thank you very much.
Be safe.
Be safe.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's Learning Exchange. I'd like to thank our presenters and audience for their time and contribution to today's event. It was a great discussion. I'd like to remind you that you may find the replay of this webinar and all webinars in our Society of Decision Professionals online library at decisionprofessionals.com. Thank you again for being with us today, and you may now disconnect.